What kind of organization was he part of?
He was on the far right party where
It is the same organization where Ben Gvir, the head of the national security now, is a minister under Netanyahu.
Yeah, newsflash. Every country that's democracy has a left wing and a right wing.
But I don't think...
The response you just gave is that politics exists. Well, counterpoint, politics is a real thing. Yeah.
I think that's at the top of their mind. Bassem, what do you think?
Well, I want to get it back a little bit, because since we were talking about Palestine and Israel, I think the most dangerous thing when you talk about this is you either called a terrorist or anti-Semitic and whatever, right? And people, I would see the people who are the very pro-Israel, who really supported Israel on 7th of October, many of them are actually anti-Semitic, especially right-wing politicians, Matt Gaetz and MTJ and all of those people. Those people, they love Israel, but they hate the Jews. They're anti-Semite. It is very obvious. And this is why you see this dichotomy about how the Jewish Voices for Peace, these are Jewish people in New York. They come in and they take over the central station, and they're all Jewish, and they say, not in my name. The whole idea is conflating Israel and with Judaism is wrong. And
yeah, Christian nationalists are trying to hijack an entire people and religion.
I think the most dangerous thing that can happen to the Jewish people of the world is to have Israel as their representative, because a lot of Jewish people don't like them to be their representatives, as many Muslims don't like some of those Islamic regimes representing them. This whole idea about making it's all or none, no. Israel have actually done a lot of criminal activities that a lot of Jews do not agree upon. And a lot of the people who go out in New York, in Brooklyn, in Los Angeles, these are Jewish people shouting, not in my name. Many of those people are actually Holocaust survivors, like Gabor, who was like a very famous Holocaust survivor himself, and he say Israel is a Zionist, terrorist, apartheid country. So if you think like I'm saying this because of my Muslim or Arab background, listen to the other Jews. They're saying that Israel is the criminal here, and it's been supported time and time and time again by the EU, by American administration. I'm not asking for anything that is out of the box. I'm asking them to stop the killing, because let's say 7th of October, worst day ever. Okay. How many people are you going to continue to kill in order to get your revenge? Because it seems that you will not be able to eradicate Hamas. As a matter of fact, you can kill 100,000 people today. What you have created is 100,000 Hamas killers. No, this has never...
And I think the question, like domestically, would be like, how many children being blown apart are you willing to continue to fund and aid before you cut off all diplomatic ties? Like, let alone, like, you know, stop all arms sales. You should have done that a long time ago. But yes, absolutely, stop all arms sales. But like at a certain point, you're going to have to either cut diplomatic ties or start doing sanctions on a nation that is committing these horrifying atrocities. Otherwise, you've got no moral standing ever, right? Like, how are you ever going to go forward and be like, oh, well, yes, Team America, World Police, we're here to dictate what democracy is like around the globe. Also, yeah, we may have like completely funded that genocide, but yeah, but the other times that we also do good things, good and bad, you know, depending on how we're feeling.
Israel tried it before 2004 and it failed 2006 and failed 2009 and failed 2012, 2014, and every time Israel came in and they killed many people as possible and they came back. The solution for this is not more killing, more war. I know people like war solves everything. You will not be able to solve everything with war. The whole idea about this is to justice. If there's land to be given back, give back the land. If there is agreement to be done, do the agreement and sit together, because believe me, whatever.
Oh, did you hear the news? If you enjoy the delicious sweet taste of Ben & Jerry's, well, guess what? Peace is a core value of Ben & Jerry's. The day is no different as we call for peace and a permanent and immediate ceasefire. Thank you, Ben & Jerry's, for publicly calling for ceasefire now. Says if not now, org.
Cost you think is too high giving up land, it will not come close to the cost of human lives that we are losing every life, whether on the Jewish side or the Muslim side or the Israeli side or the Arab side.
So how do you get rid of Hamas?
Get rid of the reasons that created Hamas.
Yeah, get rid of apartheid, occupation, to get rid of those things and allow for provisional democratic transition, and then the the return of a quality of life, reparations, land back, those kind of things.
Which is what?
The horrible living conditions, the blockade, putting people in prison.
Yes, not funding them
would
also
their own
go a
destiny.
long way.
If you do
that's something that
a
lot of
Israel
different
could have found
guilty parties would have
in
to
Uganda, which, by the way, the British government gave the Jews 8,000 acres, and then they said no to 1903. If Israel want to go to Uganda, you can have an Uganda Hamas. If you make people and put them in the lands of other people, there are already 2 million people that are already there, and then you just push them around, you will have resistance. Right? And the thing is, Hamas wasn't there since 1984. Hamas was created in 1987. Until 1987, Israel killed 100,000 Palestinians since 1948. It's not about the PLO, because Israel took Israel in 1948. The PLO was created in 1964. These are all a result of what Israel has been doing.
Why do you mention Uganda? Because the British proposed that the Jews should move to Africa and Uganda. Pull up Uganda on a map, just so we're clear. What does that have to do with anything?
What I'm saying is before the Israeli were the Jews were transported to Palestine.
Right after that whole, World War II Holocaust genocide thing.
Before.
Yeah.
Before.
During that time.
No, before.
Okay.
I'm talking about 1882.
Mm-hmm. When the Zionist movement started.
Exactly, 1882. Gotcha. At that time, there were only 3% of Jews living in.
That dude is so desperate for a gotcha that he's at this point, I feel like I don't know when this took place, because the whole, PBD podcast could have been 2 or 3 hours. So I don't know where we are in the timeline and how exhausted Bassem's gotten by this point, but he's very calm and collectively I'm not looking for a fight. I just realize that all of you need to be educated on a lot of these topics. So I'm just going to very calmly explain this to you. And this is history. And even then, it's kind of so what are you saying around the time of the Holocaust, right? That was bad, or do you not agree? Yeah, do you deny it? It's just let's get through this. Got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot of history to do here.
Palestine. And they were different. They said Argentina, they said Chile, Madagascar, South Africa, and Uganda. In 1903, the British government offered the Jewish people about 80,000 acres in Uganda. And they said no. And the reason that they said no, so there's, there was a big, this is very interesting, there was a big conflict between the rabbis and the secular Jewish movement. So the rabbis said, we cannot go, the rabbis were the one who actually objected, said, we cannot go to Palestine. It's what do you mean? It's the promised land. It's yes, it's the promised land when the real Jesus comes. So the secular said, well, maybe we should go to Palestine, and that will invite real Jesus to come. It was a whole, by the way, this is all in Theodor Herzl memoirs. You can read about that. And even 1903, Theodor Herzl, in page 96, in the pamphlet for the Jewish state, he said, maybe the Jewish people should just get what they can. So what I'm saying is these were discussions at the end of the 19th century and the 20th century. And then there's the movement that wanted to put the the Jewish people in Israel actually won. And it happened very, 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 very slowly. By 1914, there were about 7% of Jewish people in Palestine. Now, when the Balfour Declaration happened, the only one who rejected the Balfour Declaration of putting Jews in Palestine was a Jewish British businessman in the parliament, and said those people are British people and we should not put them into another place. I'm not giving you, I'm just giving you the historical.
You're giving us the history. I appreciate it. I get it. But I doubt the Jews were yo, Uganda, let's do it. No, they wanted Israel. But what do you do? What do you do at this point?
I'm sorry. I'll have to disagree with you, sir, because you had what
Man, yeah, again, just otherworldly patience.
Many of those Jews, they came from pogroms from Ukraine and from Russia.
Yeah.
And then when they went to London, they were really treated bad, and they were called the problem. We need
Oh yeah, lest we forget. Yeah, so Europeans incredibly racist towards Jewish people as well. Yep, there has been a long history of the persecution of the Jews. That part is not made up whatsoever. The persecution of the Jews, and then the diaspora, where they've had to move from one area to another, repeatedly being persecuted, and a lot of this also got reinforced through the fact that Jewish people were being maltreated. They weren't allowed to buy property, and as a result of not being able to buy property and accrue wealth, which again generationally is one of the things that you may do in order to try and improve the quality of life as you pass over property or ownership over to your siblings or your next of kin and all that kind of stuff. So they start doing lending and usury. And then of course that's where the stereotype of Jewish people being associated directly with being bankers or being misers or being obsessed with gold or being obsessed with money comes from. But like a lot of that and the origins of it are like, hey, we're not going to prohibit you. We're going to treat you differently. There's going to be a separate set of rules based on who you are, both as an ethnicity and as a religion, and you're not allowed to own property. You're not allowed to do that. We're going to treat you differently, almost like an apartheid system. Okay, so this is what's going to happen, and then in that it's like, yeah, the Europeans, oh boy, you want to look to, like, you know, a whole bunch of different nations and countries that were incredibly racist towards Jewish people.
The solution, we need the solution. This is why when Hitler came to power, he said we need the final solution.
Of course.
So you understand, all of these problems happened between the Jews coming from Eastern Europe when they went to England and Western
My British grandmother was incredibly anti-Semitic, and she was an Allied nurse in World War II. Wow.
Europe. So basically, the British people didn't like them, and they want to push them out. So by the way, I mean, we can joke about that, but seriously, the whole thing about Madagascar, South Africa, Chile, and Argentina, and Uganda, these were real discussions with real budgets.
I'm very familiar with the Zionist movement. I get it.
And then at a certain time, so.
Well, I don't know. I want to interject here and say, I don't know if you are as much as you think you are, insofar as that he has had to educate you on multiple elements of this already. You thought he was talking about 1935. He's like, no, I'm talking about much earlier. We're still talking about 19th century here. He's like, oh, what, like the Holocaust? Well before the Holocaust. So yeah, I actually want to go before the First World War. Yeah, so but let's keep going.
So 1914, 7%, and then the Balfour Declaration, and then the First World War, nothing happened. Second World War with the Nazis were like maybe kicking and killing everybody.
Yeah.
And then they started to go in mass in Palestine.
But are you sensing a common theme here?
Shut up, Postghost. So if you don't know, Postghost is someone in the YouTube chat who is obsessed with Anna Kasparian and just won't stop being like, she is a birthing person. She doesn't want to admit it. She's ashamed. Anna will not admit that she is a Some people just come in with the weirdest little like causes, or even like sometimes it's trolling, sometimes it's righteous. You know, it's hard to tell sometimes. So like people will get into like, you know, one of the many chats for a live show and they just want to feel seen. Everyone likes to feel seen, so they try to make some noise and they go off for a long time. But some people stick to it. Some people, it's like, oh, so that wasn't just a one-off to see if you get away with trolling for a little while. You just keep going and going. Like, oh no, this is a righteous cause. You care deeply about this.
They go to a country, they have success, let's kill them. They go to a country, they have success, let's kill them. They started in Egypt, they went to Spain, they went to Morocco, they went to Europe, they went to pogroms in Russia. Can I speak? Let me ask you a question.
This is not accurate.
Of course this is accurate.
Sir, this is not accurate.
What's not accurate of what I just said? The whole reason that I say that is that they've been running around the entire world.
Sir.
It's called the Jewish diaspora. I'm speaking, I'll let you speak. You could speak for a half hour. I'm asking you a 2-minute question. There's a Jewish diaspora. They're running all over the world. It culminates in the Bolshevik Revolution, Zionism. It starts Theodor Herzl. It ends in the final solution in Germany. The Jewish people said, listen, we just need a
Zionism
state.
ended.
You look at the map of the Middle East, it's as big as this room. We have a little tiny microphone. And then we're fighting over the size of this microphone when you have the entire room right here. So tell me, what should Israel do now? Does Israel have...
Sir, this has nothing to do with that aspect. It's actually your show. You literally own the microphone. This is your show that you've invited a guest onto, who is using one of your 4 microphones to be able to educate you, I would say, unbelievably respectfully. Like, oh my word, this is bad. Sorry, this is good faith to such a degree that, like, you might as well be calling Bassem Jesus right now. Like, holy fuck, he's very calmly and collectively, like, you can see they've been through the ringer already. This is probably post a lot of their early arguments and disagreements, right? Where he's just kind of like, you're just really racist. But now it's kind of like, okay, I understand. There might be some gaps in the whole story. Let's get through this. So let's start here. So what? Do you deny the Holocaust? I do not. The Holocaust was an abomination. We haven't gotten there yet, but we will. And I'll explain that part when we get to it. Don't worry.
A right to exist and defend itself, or no?
So can I answer? I'd answer.
Yeah, go ahead.
So first of all, certain things that you said in that monologue was a little bit inaccurate. Yes, they were treated badly in Europe. They were treated badly everywhere else. They were not treated badly in Spain because that was under the Arab rules.
Of course, they were. What do you mean? It was called the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah,
Look it up. Yeah.
Sir. The Spanish Inquisitions was done by the Christians against Muslims and Jews.
I didn't think he was gonna have to explain that one. I mean, I thought for sure this one's just going to be kind of a given, right? It's just going to be a natural kind of like, oh, so this part's neat. Have you ever wondered why Spanish cuisine, so much of it, like before you have a meal, a lot of it is cured meats, cured pork specifically, you know, jamon serrano, for example. And don't get me wrong, I'm not here, like, it's absolutely delicious, exquisite. In fact, if you are to go into Barcelona or many, you know, different like bars or pubs in Spain, you'll see a whole bunch of swinging pig's feet, just like literal swinging pig's feet, just salted pig's feet, where they will walk up while you're drinking, having a beer or a glass of wine, and shave a little bit off and then hand it to you. Do you know where that comes from? Why would they be giving people, offering guests to a house upon first entrance, specifically cured pork as the first thing to be like, hey, by the way, would you like to taste of this giant platter of cured pork that we have? It's not against your religion, your God, is it? It wouldn't defile you to eat some of our delicious cured pork now. Here we have it. Did you wonder the origins of all this? Where does that come from? Why specifically pork?
Okay.
Muslims and Jews were sitting
But
together.
it happened, is what I'm saying.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
What I'm saying is, before the Spanish Inquisition, Jews lived in the courts as minister and as poets, as scientists under the Arab rule in Andalusia. When the Spanish Inquisition came in, they killed both Jews and both Muslims. Sounds true.
Well, the Crusades, we all know how that story goes between Christians.
I don't know if you do. I'll be honest with you. I've like, do you think it's just about like a guy named Tom Cruise? Is it the Tom Cruise story? I have no idea what you believe at this point. Where he had to explain to you. It's like, sorry, the Spanish Inquisition. Oh, so that was done by Christians, and that was actually targeting, yes, Jewish people, yes, and Muslims as well. That, yes, specifically Jewish non-believers, if you will, heathens. Yes. So yeah, that they were, yeah, okay.
Christians and Muslims for decades and centuries.
And you understand that the first crusade did not kill a single Muslim?
Okay, but the third and the fourth and the fifth one did.
What happened with the first crusade?
Enlighten me. Tell me.
The first crusade came out from England, and they killed 2,000 Jews in Europe. They didn't even make it to Jerusalem. Yep. This is how bad the Jews were treated by the Christian Europeans. And as a matter of fact, Jews did not find refuge unless they found it in the Arab countries. I'm not saying that they were perfect, but if you compared what the Jews were enduring in Ukraine and Russia and in Western Europe and how they lived in Baghdad and Egypt and Morocco, they were a much better.
But this validates the whole point of why the Jews need Israel, because every country they go to, they're going to be.
You're talking with someone who has demonstrated to be incredibly, let's just say, racist, you know, towards a lot of different groups of people. And he specifically seems to vilify, you know, Muslim people, Arab people, thinks of them as terrorists, and inherently terrorism is going to be associated with every single one of them. He's asked Bassem multiple times to kind of like apologize for Hamas, as if Bassem is in any way related to, like, you know, he's like, oh, well, I happen to be an American, but if you want to know, like, I immigrated from Egypt. But if you're talking about, like, yeah, I do have family. My wife's family, for example, is Palestinian, and yes, they come from Palestine. Why do I have to apologize for Hamas? Why do I have to talk about the Iron Dome? Why do I have to talk about this? And so now he's giving him an interesting, by the way, history. Both talking about, you know, the Jewish diaspora, how they were, yes, persecuted by a variety of different groups throughout history. And yes, there was a very, very horrifying persecution towards Jewish people by Christian Europeans, who were slaughtering them. Absolutely, that is just part of history. And saying that at those moments in history, I know this will surprise you to learn this, but in a lot of Muslim nations, or nations that were controlled by Muslim, you know, emperors, governments, or whatever, you know, administration was taking place, in those situations, Jewish people were not as persecuted as they were in European Christian nations. And he's like, well, you've just proved my point. That's what you just proved my point. That's why we need to eliminate Gaza. Get rid of them.
Run out of town or killed. At the very least, they have their own country, so they could say, at least we have safety here. Every country, every story that you just mentioned, Bassem, is them being killed by somebody, whether it's the Christians, whether it's the Brits, whether it's the Ukrainians, whether it's the Russians. The whole point of Israel is like, we can no longer just rely on other people's niceties and empathy to not be murdered.
Okay.
So now we need a state of our own.
Let me.
You understand that?
I understand. Let me continue.
Yes or no?
So all through these years, they were living peacefully, relatively under the Arab rule. And then what happened? The pogroms in Russia and Ukraine pushed them to England. Then England said, we cannot take them anymore. Push them more to the Arabs. At the time, Jewish people in the Arab world, especially Egypt, were living. I mean, the first people who actually did the cinema and the theater were Jewish Egyptian people who lived there all their lives. Jews, Christians, and Muslims were living. Right now, the department store, like our version of Macy's and Target, they all have Jewish names because they have part of the fabric of the Egyptian society for decades, way before the Jews from Europe came. Now, when the Jews from Europe came, there's two ways to come. You can come easily, or you can come by force. They started to come with all of these ships, and then you have the Haganah, and you have all of the Zionist gangs who started to come into Palestine, and they were like 1.5 million Palestinians that you cannot erase. So the fact that this is the Arab world, you can go anywhere. No, because this is their country. So they went in, they replaced them, and then we had the 1948, and the rest is history. Now, having said that, do I want Israel to be erased and I want people to go back to Europe? I will never use that kind of argument unless that you tell me, well, why don't the Palestinians go to Arab countries? If you don't use that, I'm not going to use that. I believe that Israel is a matter of fact. And I think it's too late to come and erase or get people out, whatever. What we have to do, either a one-state solution that everybody, Palestinian and Israeli, have exactly the same equal right, and all of them have the same passport, and they live in peace. And the other reason is a two-state solution. Obviously, so far, Netanyahu and other Israeli officials have said many times there will never be a Palestinian state. Not in the West Bank, not in Gaza, ever. And these are official statements by them. So they have already said that. Sometimes people accuse Arabs, but we do not want the state of Israel. They say we don't want a state for Palestine. So you have this. As long as you think that this is your land only, and those Palestinians are indispensable and they can go other places, you will never have peace.
They've had the Oslo Accords. They've had the Abraham Accords. At what point does Israel say, I can't negotiate with these people? Hamas's charting a founding charter says we call for the destruction of Israel. In order to make peace or to make a deal, you need to have someone on the other side that is willing to at least come to the table. The closest that come was Yasser Arafat, the PLO, under Clinton, 1998. He came back. They gave him 98% of what he wanted. He came back. They said no. Would Israel, or listen,
it's got to be so weird because I feel like all of his talking points, you're basically getting like the Fox News American version of a lot of Israeli propaganda, basically. And then it's just been like beat for beat. And every single time you get to a point where like Bassem's like, oh, that's not actually accurate at all. This is how this took place. It's like, okay, fine. Well, enlighten me. Teach me.
Israel's just like America. It's a democracy. In a democracy, you have a free exchange of ideas. The Marjorie Taylor Greens that you mentioned are wildly different from the AOCs. But policy is different from rhetoric. The policy of the PLO, of Hamas, of Fatah is essentially destroy Israel.
If you want to be 100% accurate, because you can talk about how like the early charter, yes, absolutely calls for the extermination of the Jews. Like this is not me defending Hamas, by the way, but if you want to be like, oh well, on paper they're calling it's like there has been a revision to that. If you've seen the actual document, it says like we explicitly do not want to target Jewish people simply for being Jewish. Our war is with Zionism. Our war is with people who are occupying us. Our war is with people who are on Palestinian land and territory. That's what the new charter says. This is not me defending Hamas. This is not me suddenly trying to be recruited by Hamas. This is not me being a secret Hamas insurgent. I will condemn Hamas for you all you want to be able to talk about this and not have the conversation shut down. But I mean, that's accurately what it now says.
No two-state solution.
No.
The rhetoric.
Hamas is different from Fatah. Fatah is different from the authority because there's nothing in the charter of Fatah or the
But the point that I'm getting at is all these political factions. No one wants to come to the table, do a deal. And here's what's happening.
Neither does the Israel.
Because they're getting worse.
Right, but like there shouldn't be a negotiation in terms of an occupation. That's the first part, right? So like even if you despise Hamas and you think Hamas is the ultimate evil in the world, you know, you've seen the posters, you know, they're worse than Jigsaw from the movie Saw. They're worse than Jigsaw. That's Hamas. They truly are the worst of all the worst, the most evil of all human history. Even if you believe all that, this is still a situation in which there is a occupational force that is imposing its will upon what is a internationally recognized sovereign nation. That's what's taking place here.
Worse. They gave them 98% of what they want.
Sir, have you seen?
They had a good hand a few decades ago.
Sir,
now they have no hand. You have no leverage now. That's the problem.
Sir,
why do you keep saying you? Man, this is gonna be so frustrating. Just to be like, oh, I'm an American. Prior to that, Egyptian. Yeah, famous comedian in Egypt. That's me.
Have you seen the video by Netanyahu, who's bragging about spoiling the Oslo Accord on his own?
I've seen the video.
Yeah, he said like I'm gonna destroy it. We're gonna hit them. Nobody's gonna do that anymore. This is the guy. And by the way, just a little bit of thing. The Oslo Accord, you know, it was signed by Yasser Arafat from one side and from Isaac Rabin from the other side. What happened to Isaac Rabin?
He got assassinated by
whom?
By a Jew.
Okay. And
by a far right radical Jew. Because he was a moderate.
Who was a part of what part? That's Jew. What kind of organization was he part of?
He was on the far right party.
It is the same organization where Ben Gvir, the head of the national security now, is a minister under Netanyahu.
Yeah, newsflash. Every country that's a democracy has a left wing and a right wing.
I don't think...
The response you just gave is that politics exists. Well, counterpoint, politics is a real thing. Yeah. Oh, sorry. My argument was not that politics doesn't exist. Yes, no, I understand. I'm trying to point out directly that these are now people who may have positions and or are the same parties that are in positions of power, as in the same party that is in a position of power may not have wanted this two-state solution that you were proposing, but you were trying to imply that it's the Palestinians themselves that have destroyed any chance of this happening, right? It's like, well, why don't we look at the actual history here?
Every country has at least two terrorist people as ministers, because Ben Gvir was arrested on the account of killing Ishaq Rabin. As a matter of fact, there's a very famous video for him where he got the emblem of his car 2 months before Isaac Rabin's like, we've got your car, next we got you, 2 months later, Isaac Rabin. This is the kind of government that you are defending. It is a terrorist government that kills its own people. Even Beit Zalim, who is the Minister of Finance, he was arrested because he was going there by 600 liters of gasoline to blow up an Israeli highway. This is the kind of criminals who kill people, Gaza everywhere, and I find it very difficult to find somebody actually like to defend their actions.
Are you saying that Israel is the only country in the Middle East that has a thug-like regime?
Oh no, not at all.
Have you run out of bait? Is there any left? How many more you got? You know, how many more times it's going to be like, well, I'm not going to take anything you just said in any way, shape, or form as good faith, and then I'll try to formulate an argument. So do you deny the Holocaust? I'm just saying, like, how many Jewish people died in the Holocaust? Can you give a number?
But
okay, so this is pretty common for that neighborhood.
But you know what's the difference? I don't see any other country in the regime saying I'm a democratic secular country and I have Western values.
Well, according to the World Index, World Economic Index, Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. This isn't our opinion.
Exactly.
I was also wondering, I was like, is anyone else a part of this show? I feel, to be completely honest, if we want to talk about the division of labor and exploitation of labor here, I don't know what the structure is with PBD, who owns what and who gets paid out or who controls the finances. But I think the two of you should take a massive pay cut for this episode alone and then just give it to these two. All right? Just like, honestly, you kind of got a free pass.
It's the only democracy which would have terrorist people in this government, which I find it very interesting.
Here's the problem that I'm having.
Because like both clips that we've seen, it's basically like an hour goes by, then all of a sudden it's like, I just want to say that as much as I may not agree or disagree with anything you have or have not said, I'm so happy for the content. Great content. Yeah, good job, boys.
With you is that I actually
problem with me?
No, with your argument.
With me?
Well, you've already called me racist a few times.
I'm a very nice person.
I think you are a nice person.
I'm very nice.
I think you're nice.
I never called you racist.
Yes,
I called your argument racist.
multiple times, but it's all
He
good.
said undertone. He didn't call
I
it
said it's a racist undertone. Thank you so much. It's a racist undertone.
Thank you.
But like, why is it the worst thing in the world for people to like have someone point that out to them? If someone's like, so by the way, what you're just saying, that actually technically could be construed as racist. Here's why. It's like, what, are you saying that I'm a racist, bro? I never actually said that. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I'll say it. You're a fucking racist. And I think, like, in my heart of hearts, were I to, like, have a conversation about this, I'd have a really hard time denying that. But anyways, for the sake of, you know, Bassem being as good faith and wondrous as possible here, he has spent a lot of time being calm, collected, and just been like, you know, I'm telling you that there are very racist overtones to what you're implying here. He repeatedly basically tried to make Bassem Youssef an apologist for Hamas. When he brought up the Iron Dome, he was kind of like, well, why don't you build one? You know, again, he's not Hamas. He's not even, you know, technically born in Palestine. If he has, you know, Palestinian relatives, that's what he's trying to tell you. But like, this shit is very different. Also, continuously being like, yeah, well, what about all the radical Islamic terrorism? What about the religious, like, you know, extremists? What about all the Muslim extremists who like suicide bombers, bro? What about all the, like, you know, the Muslims who blow up fucking hospitals and schools and shit like that? What do you have to say about them? I don't know. Maybe interview the ones who are alive or something. Because like I don't know. Why does this have to be like, you know, all Muslims have to answer for the crimes of the radical Muslim extremists? That's a very weird way to talk to somebody, especially when you're trying to. Like,
if you look at the chat, you're probably the nicest to me today, so we're cool. So the problem that I have with you is that either you're anti-Israel or you're just intellectually lazy.
So if you're no third option. Yeah. You refuse to learn, says the person who like didn't learn a single thing from that entire fucking episode.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Can you please hit the like and subscribe button and maybe leave a comment? It really does help the videos out. But first, the people who produce everything you see before you and make this entire channel possible: Amazing Fletch, Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Salim, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Puppy, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby K, Cernicus, Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Demel, Trevbot.exe, Words Greenwood, and Travis McClinton. And also, thank you to every other person who helps fund this show. Their names are on the screen right now. It would not be possible without every single one of them. We cannot thank you enough. And if you want to join the Patreon, please come to patreon.com/theserfs and help us exist.